What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Double FU, the Fantasy Football Universe. Thanks for joining us. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel, joined by Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05 and Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist, here to break down all of the ridiculousness that's been going on in day one of free agency. It is the fallout of all fallout, but hopefully there's some value there for you in your fantasy football leagues and in real world NFL rosters. So, guys, how you feeling on this crazy first couple hours of free agency?
Overloaded with information. There's so much going on. It's like impossible to keep track of, right? We keep talking about, oh, this happens, and then boom, here comes a Gardner Minshew drop. Oh yeah, what's gonna happen? It's an endless stream of just nonsense going on today. But this is what we're for. We're degenerates. We love it.
I'm in Canada, so last week we had the NHL trade deadline. And I never realized, I watch it and it's 8 hours of a bunch of guys sitting around a desk with their heads like buried in their phone like this. And they'll look up and say, this guy was traded. That's kind of how I feel now. Like we're doing a show, but I have my phone in my hand as the updates just keep coming in faster than I can write it down to update our sheets. So
it's wild.
Imagine Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport right now and what their lives are like in the last couple hours. It's been absolute insanity. But hey, forget that. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about where some of these guys ended up. And, some of these names you already know, but more importantly, let's talk about kind of the fantasy fallout and what we can expect. So we're starting with quarterbacks here. As you can see, there's three big names, if you want to call them big names. We got Kirk Cousins, Mitch Trubisky, and Russell Wilson. We got to start with Kirko Bangs, whatever you want to call him. Two chains over here. Kirk Cousins, going from Minnesota, of all places, to Atlanta, where he belongs, wearing the jewelry. Kirk Cousins is all of a sudden the prize of free agency. What are we thinking about this fit, both for reality and fantasy? What do you like about it, Jesse?
It's fantastic for our boys who have struggled with just the just disgusting quarterback situation in Atlanta the past few years. Now we get someone who's the prototypical statuesque quarterback who it's like him and Matthew Stafford are the two guys that just absolutely pepper their guys with targets to support them for fantasy. So if you have Drake London or Kyle Pitts, you're loving life right now because they have an actual capable NFL quarterback who can run a complex like scheme and offensive. And he's, by the way, he's the best quarterback in that division. So they're going to be the betting favorite to win that division now. Sorry, Baker fans, like Kirk Cousins is better. I just hate to break it to y'all. But yeah, so I think that's just by far the biggest fantasy fallout because it affects that entire offense. Bijan's going to be better because it's a better offense too. So all the Atlanta weapons are probably going to get steamed up now because of how good Kirk Cousins is at supporting them for fantasy. So overall, that's the jaw dropping. And I think Kirk Cousins has made over $400 million in contracts so far in the NFL. My dude knows how to get paid. So congrats to him.
Yeah. My takeaway is that the buy low window for Pitts and London just very quickly turned into a sell high window. So I see people lose it already. Yeah. Get out now.
I was saying to somebody, I said, at this point, I would sell a kidney to acquire Drake London in Dynasty, and I'll have to because his price is through the roof. I think yesterday it was like he was like back end wide receiver 2, like wide receiver 22 prices. I think if you go on KTC, you can still see where those rankings are, or Fantasy Pros as well. And right now, he's got to be borderline wide receiver 1. Top 12, at least when everything solidifies and the rankings come out. What are you guys thinking about Drake London and Kyle Pitts in terms of where they will rank at their respective positions in Dynasty?
So I'm looking at Dynasty Data Lab right now. London was already a 4th round pick. Pitts was in that 5th to 6th round range. They're going to shoot up into the 3rd round. Ideally, there's going to be a bump. London was a top 15 wide receiver. He's going to be top 10. Pitts, we already saw people do polls. He's jumping ahead of Kincaid. He's jumping into that tier 1. So yeah, they're going to be very extremely heavily priced, but we've seen what good players do in good situations. They are in that good situation. So if you believe in the talent, they should be high on impact assets. I think on the flip side, this hurts Justin Jefferson a lot. He's still going to be very good, but he might not be the tier 1 wide receiver 1 of himself anymore because we have no idea how that quarterback situation plays out in Minnesota. It's like a TBD for now. So it's very interesting to see how it shakes out.
Looks like I'm going to have no shares of Drake London or Kyle Pitts this year. Would you say Kyle Pitts or Drake London was going to be up to 10? I don't want.
Yeah, he'll be top 10 for sure.
No, I'm he's 20 for me. And Kyle Pitts, I'm not taking inside the top 6 tight ends. You said rounds 4 and 5 for them. No, thank you. I will have no shares of any of them.
No, that was where they were before. So like we're like look at the price we have. We have Chris Olave, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown in that round 3 range. Like, would you rather play for Chris Olave in the New Orleans situation or Drake London?
Yep.
Because I'm paying for Drake London every time over Chris
Yeah.
Olave.
Nope.
I
I'm
agree.
taking Chris Olave without even thinking about it. I'm not even close.
I guess why?
All right,
Because
so-
he's out there. I guess.
Well, let's do it this way. Let's take a look at. I'm looking at Fantasy Pros rankings right now, and considering kind of where Drake London was, they had him expert consensus ranking so far. 40 experts. Drake London was wide receiver 20. That's going to change. Chris Olave, as you're talking about, was wide receiver 10. And this also has the rookies in there. So Marvin Harrison at 6, Malik Neighbors at 11. So right now, if we consider a few of the wide receivers who are around Drake London, Rashee Rice, wide receiver 21, or Drake London, wide receiver 20, who you got?
London, not even close.
Aaron?
Rashee Rice.
Ooh.
Rashee.
So like,
All right.
I guess the better question is like, are you not putting him up at all, or are you just keeping him in that range here?
Yep. No, I'm putting him up, just not much. I don't have the range in front of me. I'm sure there's someone I'll bump him ahead of. It's not Rashee Rice. Like I love me a good quarterback upgrade. He upgraded to Kirk Cousins. The other, I think Rashee Rice has a pretty good quarterback though.
Yeah, he does.
He does. Wide receiver 22, Rome Odunze, or Drake London?
Are these redraft rankings or these? Because this is redraft, right?
Dynasty rankings. 40
This
experts.
is dynasty.
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's a discussion. Like I have Rome closer to my top 10 as it is right now, and that's where
Okay.
London is going for me. So like personally for myself, like that's a coin flip. It really comes to the situation. If Rome goes to the Giants, like I'm just gonna prefer London. Like that's what it comes down to. So if Rome ends up with like Herbert and the Chargers, I'll probably take Rome. But like that is real close. It's just that situation's split difference on those between the two because I love both those guys.
I agree. I think I take London right now, and then I that could be changed to a Odunze depending on where he goes.
Yep. Here's one more. It's a difficult one for me. Wide receiver 19, Nico Collins, or wide receiver 20, Drake London. Who you got?
I slightly prefer London, but it's the same tier.
Yeah,
Drake
I
London.
agree. I mean, right now, Drake London is behind guys like T. Higgins. We don't even know where he's playing. DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith. So certainly we're talking about dynasty, but all of these guys, youthful assets. And when we have Kirk Cousins slinging it for potentially 4 years, totally healed, I think London's, like Jesse mentioned earlier, is going to climb up the ranks. Last question I have about Cousins before we move on. Are we at all concerned about this Achilles injury hampering his play at the beginning of the year? Or do we think he's just coming in, wheels up, and that offense is rolling from week 1?
What do you think, Aaron?
Actually, I was hoping you would take it because I'm looking something up before.
Based on his contract, that tells me they have enough confidence in him where they're like, you know what, even if you struggle early on and taking time to get back, like you're going to be that guy we expect you to be previously. So my concerns are kind of going to the wayside. Like I've always been a big Kirk Cousins supporter. I think he's a very good NFL real life quarterback. Not elite, but he's in that tier below, kind of the Jared Goff, Geno Smith type range of quarterback. Like he's in their tier. So I think he's good and he will be fine. It just may take him a little while to get back to who he was.
I don't know if he's ready, like full speed again for week 1, but I don't think it matters because it's not like he's a rushing quarterback. So
yeah,
I worry a bit, but they signed a 4-year deal. I worry less in Dynasty. I'm not sure based on how much this is going to, well, I guess, we haven't discussed that. Do you think this helps did Kirk Cousins go up or down moving from Atlanta to Minnesota for you guys? That's the one I don't know because I think it's probably a down.
I think it's more neutral with Cousins, just because like what he's done his entire career, you kind of know the quarterback of the offense he runs. Like with his age, he's 36. Like it's really hard to push him up too high with Dynasty, right? Because he is older. So I think you're just paying for production. But like if you were looking for a QB2 and you needed to keep QB2, I think he's a guy you should still target. Like you can probably get him cheap.
In this situation, I don't think he's going to be worth it in redraft. I'm assuming this is going to make him go up the board, and I don't know if he plays week 1. So I think I would be avoiding him in redraft.
And not only that, right? He's coming into a brand new system. He's learning the system. I mean, I don't know if it's helpful or it's just a detriment overall that everyone else is going to be learning the system because we got Zach Robinson coming in, right? And to implement that offense. We got a new head coach. Everything is in turmoil in Atlanta. This is one of those situations that could take a month or more at the beginning of the season to really gel. So if you think about the idea of whether we're talking about redraft or you're talking about dynasty, where you should have some level of a redraft mentality, right? There could be a buy low opportunity on these guys early in the season if they're still kind of piecing things together.
I don't remember Kirk being a check down monster. It's like they're going out of their way to intentionally sabotage Bijan Robinson's value every year. It's like, let's give it to a guy who's going to throw the ball nonstop, never hand off, and never check down to a running back. So not sure I love it for Bijan. I mean, it's better offensive wise overall. They're going to score more, but I don't know if he necessarily touches the ball more.
Well, we've seen Dalvin Cook put up some monster seasons with Kirk Cousins, and I think Bijan's a better player than Dalvin really ever was. So I honestly think he'll be fine. The way I look at it is he just makes the offense better. It gives him more opportunity to score touchdowns. Is the way I look at it. Like, I don't necessarily think it's gonna make him in like the Christian McCaffrey target share monster, but he's gonna get the volume and just be a very good player, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the last thing I just kind of want to look up here is their draft picks that the Atlanta Falcons are working with. What do they have? What's their first round pick?
It's pick at 8, right? Yeah, it's pick 8.
Yeah.
That's where they take JJ McCarthy. Damn it.
So 8 is really interesting, right? McCarthy's definitely not going there at this point. You have to imagine. It's probably going to be one of those elite offensive tackles, I would assume. It's probably not going to be a guy like Rome Odunze, but that would be something really special in the first. Or I was trying to see if they had a second pick.
They have 4 top 100 picks.
The only offensive tackle worth going that high is going to go one pick in front of them to Tennessee. Joe Alt.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's 2 guys that are in like the top tier, but you could make a case for
the Washington guy that deserves to go that high, though.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on how you feel about him, to tell you the truth. But
I mean,
it's a good class. Yeah, it's just like Alt's like the tier 1 guy, and then there's a couple other guys you make a case for, but they might have to reach. They also need defensive help desperately, so they could take an edge rushers for sure there and like improve that line. It's just, I don't know. I feel like you're kind of reaching an edge rusher personally.
I guess they could take Fulaga or however the hell you say.
Mm-hmm.
I had
some other guy I'm blanking on too.
Fotanu and Fulaga. There's 2 of them with names I can't pronounce. But I have, and there's also Latham, but I have all of them closer to 20 than 8.
Yeah, I think they'll get steamed up just based on need.
Yeah, and I think it also depends what Raheem Morris decides to do. We know he's a big defensive guy, running the show now over there in Atlanta. So with Jimmy Lake at DC, are they going to dive in and look to bolster that defense through the draft? Are they even done in free agency? Maybe not. We still got a couple of big name free agents out there that we're going to talk about in a minute here. So Atlanta's really intriguing to me. They were really close. They seem to be a quarterback away. They finally got their quarterback. So, wheels up in the ATL. So we'll see how it goes. Let's move on because and talk about guys we don't really want to talk about, so we can get rid of the quarterback position for the moment. Mitch Trubisky, nothing really to discuss here. Goes back to Buffalo. We know he's backing up Josh Allen. You can see the details of the deal here. 2 years for $5.25 million. Fine, whatever, Mitch. But let's talk about Russell Wilson, who's making less money, or I guess significantly less money in his deal with Pittsburgh because Denver's paying his entire salary. Steal of the century if Russ can throw, 14 touchdowns, which he should be able to do at his advanced age. So, Aaron, let's start with you. What are you thinking about Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh? How do you feel about his fit? Maybe with Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith over there now, and we have those 2 excellent running backs. And still, if they stay, Deontay Johnson especially, who could be on the move, if they stay, a decent group of pass catchers. What do you think about Russ and Pitt?
You're not winning me over there, but fucking Arthur Smith. But I mean, it's a case of it can only go up, right? You're going to get every single one of them. Like, who on that roster are you going to pay a high price for? They're all throwaways at this point. Half them are on waivers. Like, I guess Deontay, George Pickens. There's nobody they can't get any worse. So I'm in on them. I'm not going to overpay, but they're not going to be people I'm actively targeting or players I'm actively targeting. But I think it could help one of the running backs. Freiermuth should be decent. I was trying to think about that earlier. who profiles close as the better fit for Russ. In Seattle, he was good with DK and Lockett.
Mhm.
In Denver, it seemed to be Sutton. Who's closer to the Sutton? Is it?
Well,
you think
so that's a really interesting point, because I was thinking about this too. Like, Russ seems to be a guy who just locks on to a favorite wide receiver, and like you were saying, it was more DK. Even though Lockett kind of came through with high level efficiency in Seattle, it was much more Sutton than it was anybody else, especially when Dulcich went out. And so, Russ hyper targeting someone like Deontay Johnson if he stays is super interesting. Russ maybe with Pat Freiermuth, who's all but guaranteed to stay on the field anyway in an Arthur Smith offense, right? Will he command that target volume from Russ? So it's interesting to think about. He's going to hyper target someone. If Deontay Johnson stays, he's got to be the guy, right?
You know who? No. You're overthinking this. You know who the winner is for the Steelers, given the way this is played out, right?
Who's that?
Darnell Washington.
Yeah. Jonnu Smith.
Backup tight end who's going to crush.
Jonnu Smith, negative 2.0. Darnell Washington.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's going to be. They're going to have an offensive lineman out there catching 5 touchdowns.
Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Russell Wilson gives them the opportunity they didn't have, and that's to reach a potential ceiling, which was just not in the range of outcomes. Obviously, Russ has diminished. He's not the player he was before. But Kenny Pickett is the only quarterback in Super Bowl era to have 500 pass attempts and under 2% passing rate. Like, that's absurdly just inefficient and bad. So I get it. I know Russ is not the guy we wanted before, but he gives these guys, these wide receivers, a chance to increase who they are and not give you 10 points per game. You could potentially hit 15 or more. Same thing with Najee or Warren. I think that's more going to be a cluster, and it's going to be similar, right? Because of how they're going to split that offense. But who knows? Maybe one guy steps forward. I just think it's worth betting on those guys in that range because Pickens is like a late first in dynasty range. Deontay is like a mid to late second. And then Warren and Najee is really more like dart throws. So if you really want to take a gamble on it, I don't mind doing that. It's kind of similar to what we had in Tampa Bay, Seattle the last year. It's these offenses with skill position players. And if they actually increase from the year before, like, you can make good profit on those guys. So I don't mind investing on them, but it's all just cost dependent, to tell you the truth.
While we're on the Steelers here, is it just me? But they signed a punter. Is it just me, or is the old Texans punter Bill Burr?
I saw that too from you. Yeah, he looks
Burr,
identical. Right? It looks like him. It looks like him for
sure. It was a joke at first. I'm like, this is okay. Yeah, I get it. It's Bill Burr, but that's really what the punter looks like. It's insane.
If Bill Burr actually came out onto the NFL field, it doesn't matter in what capacity, kicker, punter, that he's going to get absolutely murdered. And he'd have plenty of material for years to come.
Right, exactly.
For that, for sure. For me, look, I think if Deontay Johnson stays, he's still got the juice. He's going to be able to get open. I think he becomes the clear-cut number one. I actually like Pat Freiermuth in a Russell Wilson-led offense. I don't think he's like a top 8 fantasy dynasty redraft tight end, but he could sneak into back end tight end 1 numbers and give you some usable weeks. So certainly in best ball, I think he's worth a late round flyer. And if you pick him up and stash him, maybe he just develops a rapport. Maybe there's some injuries to some key pieces. I think that's fine. With George Pickens, I was never really in on Pickens because he was this big boomer bust guy anyway. I don't think there's a way that George Pickens stays consistent, especially with Russ. Do you see any hope for a consistently elite George Pickens with Russell Wilson at the helm?
Well, the one thing Russell Wilson's always been good at is the deep ball and throwing the deep ball. Like, he drops it in the bucket, and that's George Pickens' game, right? Like, he can. We've seen the things he does. Like, he's able to break big plays and do things that Deontay really can't. So I think if you're looking at it that way, he gives you these like boom weeks where he could literally go off for 30 fantasy points a week. I don't know if it's going to be consistent to your point, but they both were like neck and neck on like targets and target rate and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who develops the chemistry better between those guys. But if I'm getting Deontay like multiple rounds later, personally, like, I still think he's a good player. I'd just rather prefer that than Pickens. But you're saving off like 6 years with George Pickens' dynasty. So there is the flip side of that too.
Yeah. We taking Pitts over Freiermuth?
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But Aaron, I've got a more important question. Does Arthur Smith let Russ cook?
Order takeout?
It's 65% run, 35% pass in the Pittsburgh offense in 2024. God help us. All right. Well, we've talked about quarterbacks long enough. Let's move on to the running backs and see all of the big boys who got paid. You can see it right here. Josh Jacobs to Green Bay on a 4-year deal for $48 million.
Is that what it was? They finally announced it?
Yeah.
Yep. Saquon Barkley, next 3 years from Philly. So he gets more per year, but not by much, $37 million total. Then you got Pollard to Tennessee, DeAndre Swift to Chicago, Singletary to the Giants, Antonio Gibson, great, to my New England Patriots, and Gus Edwards to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think we got to start at the top here with Josh Jacobs. Not only do the Packers sign Jacobs, they release Aaron Jones. It's only Jacobs and not much else there in the backfield. Aaron, what are we thinking about Green Bay? What the heck are they doing?
That scares the living shit out of me all the way around. What are we going to do with the 900 pass catchers we had? That I don't know. This one scares me. I don't even know how. I don't think this helps anyone. I think it's really just they're going to spread the ball around. Jacobs was getting 90% of the work. It was him and Devontae Adams. I can't see how this helps his value. They're a better team, but are we convinced that Jordan Love was as good as he was last year? I'm not. I think he's good. I don't know if he was that good.
I'm a big Jordan Love fan after last year.
Yeah,
the thing is,
Jordan Love is the QB5. I don't know if I'm that big of a Jordan Love fan.
QB5.
Well, that's fair. That's spicy. Yeah.
Didn't he finish as like 5, 7? He was.
I think that's how he.
Yeah,
QB5. Yeah. Okay. But so that's super interesting, right? Like Aaron Jones, he was injured for a majority of last season. We had AJ Dillon playing a primary role, which was terrible. AJ Dillon just isn't that guy. He's gone. Who knows where he'll land? He's someone who we're waiting with bated breath to hear about. But Josh Jacobs, if he is truly the guy and they don't bring in like a 1B behind him, like what are we expecting for like his I don't know, what is it? He's 26 years old, so it's probably his sixth. He's going on his 6th year now as a starter in the league. So 6th year vet. Ian Hartitz put out a tweet earlier, which had Jacobs at the bottom among 48 RBs that were charted in the 40s in nearly every major PFF charted category among RBs last season. Was just a disastrous year, and he still comes out as one of the most coveted running backs in free agency. Jesse, is he going to be the guy, or are they going to bring somebody in? Like, what the hell are the Packers doing here?
I mean, they'll probably draft a guy, right? Because it's like Goodson and a couple just nonchalant whatever's in the backfield besides him. But if you look at the previous year, he was one of the most efficient, best running backs in the league. And that can happen running backs in schemes, how it completely flips itself on its head. We saw that with Dameon Pierce and Houston, where they basically were like, all right, you do not fit what we're going to do. We're bringing in Singletary and he was massively better. So I think he fits what Green Bay is trying to do. Like, we always loved Aaron Jones, but he never got the volume. He could never secure enough volume. Where Jacobs, he's never had less than 262 touches in a season. So, like, that's his low end. Like, 2 years ago, he had like 394. Obviously, when you get that much work the year after, usually you fade. So that makes sense why that happened. I think he's somewhere in the middle. But what I really think happens is he takes a big chunk of the work, and then there may be like 1 or 2 pass catchers in the offense. But overall, those pass catchers are going to fall short. Like, they just all can't hit. It's kind of similar to what we're talking about with Pittsburgh. Like, you cannot have 5 guys on offense be supported for fantasy. It's impossible. So I think Jacobs is a big winner, going to one of the better offenses behind a really good offensive line too. There's that factor on top of it. Like, Green Bay revamped their offensive line, and it is substantially better than what the Raiders have. So you put it all together, I think he's a locked-in top 12 guy. I'm not sure based on the efficiency where that goes, but I think you can count on that for at least year 1.
Yeah. And something that I think we've learned to trust right now is Matt LaFleur and his leadership in Green Bay. He's been able to keep that ship afloat and consistently winning and looking good as an entire team. Brian Kunst, if I can pronounce that correctly, the GM over there, has his drafts the last few years have looked phenomenal. He seems to know what he's doing from a roster construction standpoint. So it feels like a trust the process sort of situation here. Let's see if Green Bay, does anyone have off the top of their head Green Bay's number 1 draft pick, where they pick 25? I got it. So they picked 25th. So at the back end of the first round, they have the Jets' 2nd round pick as well as 41. So 2 seconds and a first. Aaron, I know we've been doing a deep dive into this running back class. They should not be picking a running back in the first, but if they go running back in the second to, even further solidify this offense, is there any like a rookie running back that you think would fit alongside Josh Jacobs in Green Bay?
If they spent a ton of money on a free agent running back to then use a second round pick on a running back, they should be executed.
welcome to the Seattle Seahawks lifestyle, my friend. It's a fun life. Let me tell you what.
It happens, man.
I'm in favor of Pete Carroll being executed. Trust me. So, it's not in this running back class. There's no one I'd want. There's no one I'd want in this draft class that I would take in the second round period.
All right, 2/3. They got 2/3, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. Any running back that you think would fit there in the class?
No, with what they gave Jacobs, they shouldn't need it. Like, he should be their 3 down back, right? He should be he should be Aaron Jones plus, because he's theoretically a better runner and a slightly worse pass catcher. So it's not like they need a pass catching specialist. That should be Jacobs. It's not like they need an early down grinder. That should be Jacobs. For what they paid him, he should be their every down guy. And then you'll just have a 6th rounder or whoever the hell. Who was it? Is it Patrick Taylor, the back there still?
There's hits like him and somebody else. Yeah.
They should have someone come in and spell him every once in a while, but I can't see why they would waste significant capital on someone who should be a backup. Like, you don't burn that much money and then say, well, I guess Seattle does, but
I think it speaks to more this class and the lack of skill position talent in the running back room. Like, we're seeing how the free agent market is playing out. Interior offensive line are getting paid, defensive tackles are getting paid, safeties are getting paid, running backs are getting paid. It just speaks to like the premium and what's available. And so like teams are like pushing money into where they can. And the non-premium positions are getting paid because these are skilled position players that are still good, and teams have a boost in cap money. So this seems like a very weird free agency year. Like, I think it's gonna stand out, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting point. I wish I could give it credit. I listened to a few too many podcasts, but it was a Matt Waldman, Sam Monson type point. And I think I've heard a few people make this point that because of all the NIL deals that are going down in college football, right, because of the weird COVID year, right, we have a bunch of prospects coming out who spent 5-6 years in college, who are 24, 25 years old at this point. It's just kind of we're in a strange situation here where a bunch of guys who we thought were coming out are actually going back to school. A bunch of guys have come out a lot later than we expected. So it's really a weird situation where the back end of the draft, day 3, is likely to be one of the worst that we've had in recent memory, just because the depth isn't there beyond round 3, round 4 in terms of, a quality talent that's going to stick on roster. So I think that speaks to your point, Jesse, of like free agency, just day 1 going insane and everybody spending up, especially in this RB class. Let's move on to talk about Saquon Barkley in Philly. I mean, this to me is probably the biggest bombshell here. Not only does Philly get a legit running back that is not Miles Sanders, not cast off DeAndre Swift, not old and can't even get on the field, Rashad Penny. They finally have their RB1. Hopefully Saquon can still be in his prime at this point, but does he even need to be with Jalen Hurts in that offense? It's just exciting. And considering the fact that he comes over from division rival New York Giants, this is pretty ridiculous.
Okay.
What are your initial thoughts on Saquon?
How can this be good for Saquon for fantasy?
Explain.
Okay, he couldn't get more volume than he was going to get last year in the Giants. There's 900 billion better pass catchers on this team. You're going to have Jalen Hurts vulture every goal line inside the 5-yard touchdown. How is this going to get any better? They're going to have a better offense that scores more. He's not going to score any of those touchdowns. He doesn't break off long runs anymore. There's no way. How does this help Barkley's value? Helped him in real life. Doesn't help you if you own him in fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes down to. NFL, it's a better fit. Like, the thing with the issue that they've had with these running backs in Philadelphia the past few years is their horrible vision, and the offensive line was boosting them up. Like, it was making up for the issues. Saquon Barkley is a weird running back is because he thrived in like a non-traditional way as a running back. He did things.
Aaron Jones to Dallas. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, let's fucking go.
We'll talk about that in 2 minutes.
Go.
2 minutes.
That's
2 minutes.
incredible.
I've seen it live.
Yeah, but to your point, like Saquon Barkley, it's gonna be hard for him to get the targets, and that's the biggest issue for him, I think.
Yeah.
But overall, I think he's more gonna be a high floor guy and just not a high ceiling guy anymore. But he'll still be a guy that is gonna get enough volume in that offense because they want to run the rock. They do want to feature those guys. We just saw DeAndre Swift put up 1,200 plus rushing yards, right?
Yes.
So like you're putting Saquon Barkley in this offense, I don't think it's good. Like maybe it hurts the ceiling, but floor play, like I think he's fine if you needed like an RB2 on your team moving forward the next years. And his value probably will drop a little bit. So he might be worth checking out.
Two big things for me on the Barkley move. Thing number one, he's in his 2 most recent seasons where he was completely healthy. He was the PPR RB5, and then last year he was the PPR RB13. So he's still hovering right there as an RB1. I think that's still well within his range of outcomes in Philly. Like we're talking about, there's going to be more opportunity to score just in a better offense, right? He didn't even have his first string quarterback in New York last season. Daniel Jones out for most of the season, and he still was the RB13, right? So he needs that volume, but at the same time, and Aaron, this is to your point earlier, yes, Jalen Hurts is vulturing those goal line touchdowns, but for how long, right? Jalen Hurts is still super physically able. He's still powerful and can definitely get low and get that extra yard, whether it's on a 4th and 1 on the 30 or at the goal line. I just think that this signing indicates that Philadelphia doesn't want Jalen Hurts taking 20 touchdowns at the goal line, right? That's a super useful play, but Jason Kelce just retired, right? Is the tush push because of Jason Kelce, who comes in at center, right? And then are they able to execute that play, or did they need a big body back like Saquon to take more of that goal line on?
That's a very good point. So it's better offense, better offensive line, possible replacement for the tush push, but I don't know. Like he was the entire offense in New York.
Yeah.
Even if he still gets some rushing work, like they're gonna feed AJ Brown and Devonta Smith far too much.
Healthy Goddard.
I can't see how this is anything more than a lateral. Like better offense, but it's gonna be spread around. I don't like this for him. But the problem is he's going to Philly, so I think people are gonna see Philly and instantly double his value. And I don't think he's worth it. Like I don't know what he's going off the board right now. Back end RB1 in drafts.
In Dynasty, he's RB12. He's going like the mid-6th round in Dynasty startups right now. So like he's already kind of discounted based on his age and people would think of him in these drafts. Yep. I do think to your point, they do want to kind of take some of the pressure off Jalen Hurts, right? That just makes sense because like no matter how big he is, we saw Cam Newton break down over the course of time with these rushing tips. Like you could be the biggest guy in the world, you keep taking shots and doing these. It will wear on you. And we saw Hurts was dealing with an injury like the main part of last year too. Like he was not the same athletic guy he was the year before. So I think you bring in Barkley and a better offense, he'll be more efficient. He might not get, 30 touches a game. That's fine, but he can get up to 20 and he can be an efficient back in that offense and scored so I think overall it's probably close to similar how it shakes out. It's just like you're not getting the RB1 finishes. And that really wasn't in the range of outcomes to begin with anyways, I don't think.
And like you were saying, over the last 3 seasons, Barkley has 57, 76, and 60 targets a season. That's going to dry up. We're hoping for 40 targets within a Jalen Hurts offense. And we're hoping that there isn't an RB2 who takes off some of the load because as we know, these running backs, these backfields are becoming committees more often than not. Let's get into the breaking news that we just had here. Let's see if I can refresh and get us an updated.
I'm waiting because I don't have that on confirmed yet.
Okay.
I haven't seen it anywhere.
I seen it. It was either Schefter or Rappaport because that's what I'm getting live from, but I don't know what they said if that was in talks, but I did what you did. I went to refresh and now I can't find it. So let's hold off on that one.
Okay. So then let's talk about Tony Pollard here going to Tennessee. I don't think that's an ideal landing spot for a number of reasons. For Tony Pollard truthers, for Tajay Spears truthers, for anyone who wanted to see either of those two, Pollard or even DeAndre Swift go to the Houston Texans and form an ultimate offense, right? I was hoping for a lot of these things to happen, but Pollard to Tennessee is kind of one of the more disappointing ones in my view. That team and that offense is still developing. How are we feeling about this? And what are we thinking about Pollard's and Spears' value now?
But
not great.
Doesn't
great.
this go back to why you don't buy in the offseason? Because
Mhm.
everyone jumped in on Spears. What was he up to RB8 at some point? You had to
he's
know.
He's up there.
He's going for a
This
first.
is with what did we say with Zamir White? They're
Yep.
gonna add someone or they're gonna draft someone. You knew it's not gonna be Tyjae Spears. What did he go in the third round, fourth round? Fourth round?
Late
He was
third, I think.
he was on KTC. He was up to RB13, I think, at one point. He was RB, 15 or 16 on Fantasy Pros. He's still, people. Yeah, you were right. People were taking him in the third round of startup drafts because they're like Tyjae Spears. He's the new Tony Pollard. He's the new, he's the new hotness in the backfield on his own. And that's not the case now. Him and Pollard share a backfield.
People miss the point, though. You buy Chase Brown. You buy these guys before the stock goes up when they're almost free. You can't buy Tyjae Spears when he's at RB11 price because he could only go down. He wasn't going to get this to himself.
If you're going to buy a player like Spears, wait until the season is about to begin and invest then, or mid-season. By the time you know what's going on, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you do it now. You're just asking for risk, and this is the problem I think a lot of managers have. Like, I shared a trade the other day where somebody sent 2 firsts for a bunch of old guys who are in uncertain free agent situations, and I'm just like, why the F would you do this? But to like look at his value, so he's going right next to Josh Jacobs. He's RB14. He's RB15. Behind that is Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, you could make a case for him in that range, but like, why is he a top 15 running back before we know how it shakes out in Tennessee? Like, that was my biggest issue. I was like, dude, you're spending premium capital, you don't need to spend on him. Like, that's always just, it's a flawed move because there's too many ways for it not to hit for you.
Yeah, and like, if you're talking about Tyjae at RB14 and what is it, Ramondre at RB20, I feel like right now after these 2 signings, you can flip them, right? Yep. Ramondre is going to have plenty of work because Gibson's not carrying the mail there in New England. And that's what we want with running backs. We want the talent, but we want the volume as well. And we know Tyjae Spears, that's cut in half. We know Ramondre, that's likely to go up. If my Patriots give Antonio Gibson 175 touches, I'm going to be, it's a lost season likely anyway, but that's going to be one of the more ridiculous things that happens.
That's an interesting point. Do we think Stevenson goes up in value? I was operating under the assumption Gibson's going to come in and take all his passing down work.
I don't think he's going to because he's not the best. Like, his issue is pass protection and the things he do. Like, I made a comment, like, there's no way in hell Bill Belichick would sign this guy because of his issues he has as a running back. So it's like, it's a completely different scheme, but I think Ramondre is just a better player, like, to tell you.
So what do they bring him in for? If he's not going to come in to be a pass catcher, why did they sign him?
He's the 1B. Like, yeah, they signed him for like $3 million a year. I think they needed another body in that room. He's the 1B would be my assumption. Where he'll come in and play some here and there, but I still think Ramondre is the guy.
Well, and all right, so we're switching to talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Antonio Gibson for a second. So 3 years, $11.25 million to the New England Patriots, and that's the thing that I'm thinking about, right? Previously, we want Ramondre back there because he was a great pass protector for Mac Jones. Mac Jones is off to Jacksonville now. The Patriots are either going to draft a quarterback at 3 or bring in, a Sam Darnold on the cheap and continue their multi-year rebuild at this point, which personally I would prefer, and trade that 3 and pick up some picks. Whatever shakes out, let's assume it's Daniels for a second, or even a Fields anyway, a mobile quarterback. We don't necessarily need Ramondre back there pass protecting because we know the quarterback's not going to check down and that quarterback's just going to take off from the first sign of pressure.
Makes sense to me. Like, I just don't know. Honestly, I don't know if there's upside for either one of them, like really high end upside. It's just like the price point from him for Gibson was RB44 right now. He was basically free in the offseason. So if you wanted to buy him beforehand and like hope it worked out, I totally get it. At that price point. It's completely different than a Tyjae Spears where you're paying premium prices, right? If you're taking a dart in like a mid-third round and you're throwing it to Gibson, you're hoping it works. Like, yeah, there's upside in that situation. He lands in the right spot. But like where he's at right now, I'm not sure if it could upside at all.
Yeah, I feel that. Let's not talk about him anymore. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift to Chicago, joins a crowded backfield. My biggest concern with Swift has never been the talent. It's the fact that coaches hate him, and the fact that he's coming from Philadelphia, where that offensive line was one of the best lines. It certainly was the best line in the league. One of the best run blocking lines in the league, and one of the best lines in the league for years. And we saw Miles Sanders absolutely torpedo his value because he was just bad, but look great behind that Philadelphia offensive line. Are we to believe that DeAndre Swift has just become a significantly better running back simply because of his time in Philadelphia, or is his production more a product of that line? Now he's going to Chicago, where there's a lot in flux. It could be, and there's competition. Roschon Johnson, decent back, showed some flashes. Khalil Herbert has showed some flashes in his few years in the league, right? Those guys are closer to a DeAndre Swift level talent than Rashad Penny clearly was, than Gainwell and who am I forgetting back there? Boston Scott.
Yeah.
Right. So what are we thinking about this move here? Is he immediately the one? Does he matter for fantasy? What are we doing with Swift?
I mean, he's at least in the Caleb Williams offense. And like we've seen Caleb Williams support, like he did this with Marshawn Lloyd, like he supported him as a pass catcher. Like I think he gives you that option to be that guy. But like overall, like I just think he's been an overrated running back for the last few years. The deficiencies are there. His vision sucks. So you definitely need the Bears offensive line to be very good to allow him to like do what he did in Philadelphia last year. Philadelphia felt like the best case scenario for him. Now he's going to a situation which is in flux. And like, I have a lot of concerns and question marks about them paying him as the first running back of free agency. He was the first guy that hit the news this morning. It's like, why would you choose him to run that offense when you have all these other backs you could pick? So, I mean, we'll see if it's a Ryan Poles masterclass or not. I don't think it is, but who knows? But overall, I'm just really not that interested in Swift in Chicago.
Aaron, what are you thinking?
It's got to kill Khalil Herbert, right? Is he a free agent? I don't understand this. They take an already crowded backfield and they add more. So Herbert's got to be gone. And then it's a split between him and Roschon. It pains me in my infinite shares of Roschon Johnson, but I don't know. Maybe not, because you assume 4 games in and any real workload and Swift will be hurt, but
I think it tells us what they think of the running backs in the room by them to go out and pay like Swift that amount. I'd say is the best way to look at it.
But here's the other thing, right? We're all assuming Caleb Williams, right? You're bringing in DeAndre Swift, who is not a good pass protector, right? Jalen Hurts didn't need much pass protection, but DeAndre Swift wasn't the guy doing it anyway. They brought in Scott, right? That's why Scott had a role. They brought in Gainwell. That's why Gainwell was a significantly better pass protector last year. It's not saying much, but it's saying that, DeAndre Swift is not a good pass. Roschon Johnson, I don't think he's a great pass protector. Khalil, these guys aren't great pass protectors either. So, like, why are you bringing in DeAndre Swift over a guy like Zach Moss, who would have been significantly cheaper, able to do some of the same things, or drafting one of these rookies? Maybe they still will, but I don't really understand the move for the build they're looking to, what they're looking to put together in Chicago.
Yeah, like he had 268 touches last year, and he did have 57 targets, was it? I can't talk. 49 targets last year, so he had a decent amount of targets. I just don't know, man. I have way more question marks about Swift than any of these other running backs because of the scheme he was in last year and his time, like injuries and his issues as a running back. He's an incomplete running back, and it's going to show up. And so I don't know why they did that. But this one's perplexing to say the least for me.
Yeah, I agree. Another perplexing one, but one that actually makes a ton of sense, but for fantasy, it's really going to hurt people, I think. Devin Singletary to the Giants, right? You see the kind of money that he commands. It's definitely third tier running back money in terms of what guys were offered. Singletary still a capable back, still young enough at 26 and a half years old. He'll be able to stick around for a couple of years. The problem is he's now in a significantly worse offense. And are we to believe that Devin Singletary is going to be the only one getting work? Are the Giants going to stick with Eric Gray and help me out? Corbin, right? There's another one.
Gary Brightwell.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Brightwell, right? Like, are they going to stick there? Are they going to draft somebody? Are they done in free agency at the running back position? I don't know. But Devin Singletary, for all the sense he makes in reality football, this is a huge hit to his fantasy value, no?
Yeah, but we said this last year, didn't we? Houston, this is the worst offense. They're going to be terrible. I'm not expecting the Giants to turn it around, but they've got to add someone. If they don't add someone, it's got to be good for his value because there's nobody else there. But I don't know. He seemed like a prime sell high candidate just because he wasn't going to do what he did last season for the last half of the year. So
yeah, that's fair.
In his entire career, he's never had less than 900 yards. Like every season he's played, he's so like I get it. I think he's just more limited from the athleticism standpoint, but he's the guy coaches love, and we see this every time because he does what running backs need to do, and he doesn't mess up. And that's the thing that coaches love. And so like makes sense for Dayball. He's like, oh yeah, I want a guy that's gonna do the work. He's pretty much the antithesis of Saquon and how he plays. So it's pretty interesting to see how he's gonna fit there. I mean, sure, 3rd round pick again. If you want to take a gamble on him, go for it. But I would wait until we see what happens with the draft and who they bring in, because they're going to bring somebody else in. Like they didn't sign him that much. The running back class, as bad as it is, there's still guys that can, give him some competition. So he'll be a guy you can probably stream on occasionally every once a week.
Yeah, I mean, he'll still be a starting running back, and at this point, likely the 1A in that backfield. The problem is we have Daniel Jones, who we know takes off more often than he's going to check down. We have likely a top wide receiver coming in through the draft. Maybe they're not done in free agency as well. We have hopefully a healthy Darren Waller if he decides not to retire back there. Bellinger was capable enough, or at least Daniel Jones was hyper targeting him when he was in there for the type of player that he is. So is there room for Singletary to produce in this less than stellar offense? He's certainly not going to command, let's see what it is exactly. He had 30 receptions on 38 targets. He had 216 rushing attempts. I mean, he's decent between the tackles, but is there even a between the tackles, available to run through in New York, especially when you're going to be going up against the Philadelphia defensive line? I'm not going to the Dallas defensive line, I guess. I'm not going to throw in the Commander defensive line because that's completely, dismantled. But yeah, I just don't see it here in New York. So Devin Singletary, that's a fade for me. I agree.
I'm running through my list here of all the free agents who've signed, and some of them, the weapons around them are getting better. Their value will go up. Mm-hmm. I don't think I have a single player who's signed today who I think it benefited their value. The closest I would say is maybe Josh Jacobs.
I think Jacobs for sure.
Yeah. Other than that, I think everything's a lateral move. Like DeAndre Swift, Gus, Gibbs, Kirk Cousins. Did any of these guys get higher in value? Their weapons did. Like it helps the Falcons pass catchers theoretically, but
good point.
I think it's lateral moves for all of them in fantasy.
Yeah, another guy we're going to talk about in a minute is Gabe Davis. And I think Gabe Davis helps out Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram more than he helps out Gabe Davis. So I agree with that point. Other than kind of Josh Jacobs, it really does seem like either lateral moves for these players personally in fantasy. Unless you're buying that Gus Edwards hype to the Chargers, they're going to run, 600 times this season. Gus's 300 touches. Let's go, Gus Edwards.
I will say Singletary, we have no idea who the quarterback's going to be in New York. They've talked about, they brought in Russell Wilson. They clearly don't want Daniel Jones there. So who knows who the quarterback's going to be? I think there's a lot of mystery. So, I mean, they could get JJ. He could be there. They could take him. So I don't know what's going on in New York. I think it's really hard to say. There's too much uncertainty with that. The offensive line, all the injuries and everything that's going on there. I think he gives them a stable running back they can trust. Outside of that, I really don't know what to do with the Giants right now. I just feel like a team I don't want to invest in, to tell you the truth.
Agree.
This seems like a good day where if you own any of these players, if someone is convinced that they are a huge winner, sell high, because I don't know. Okay, Josh Jacobs, I guess, is kind of a winner, but everyone else, it seems like a lateral. Except for, like I said, if you want to, the Falcons pass catchers seem like big winners. Mm-hmm. The Packers pass catchers seem like big losers. So, sell.
I would say we're waiting on two offenses, the Cowboys and the Texans. Whatever running backs land there, they're going to get skyrocketed in value because those offenses are legit. So
not necessarily a good one.
Yeah, I mean, we still got Henry. He's going to sign somewhere, right? So he's going to get boosted wherever he goes. Yeah, Eckler. I mean, Eckler's a whole nother discussion, right? It's So I think we still got a couple dominoes to fall. But yeah, it's really hard to be a big winner this early in the offseason, right? Because we still have people to sign, we still have drafts, and it's a long way to go. But I mean, if anybody you're talking about is big on one of those guys, test the market, see if anybody will give you more than they were worth yesterday.
Will Disley to the Chargers. Oh, that's good.
Hey-o.
Yeah.
Tell me you're not going to run the ball without telling me you're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball so much this year. The Chargers.
Those Seahawks tight ends are cashing in today.
Yeah. Herbert, it's going to be rough.
Last point on the Giants here is, Daniel Jones might not be the guy, but he might have lost his job last season if Tyrod Taylor didn't get injured. What do we think of the possibility that the Giants just run it back with Daniel Jones and Tyrod? And if Tyrod takes over, then maybe that's a situation where some of these pass catchers or running backs, in the case of Singletary, kind of gain value.
Tyrod's bad for a running back. He runs too much still, even at however old he is, old as shit. But
yeah, if you're, I mean, it depends who you're comparing him to. If you're comparing him to the DeVito situation, yeah, he's better, like, you know, that quarterback. But yeah, overall, outside of that, like, we don't got any more Italian chef kisses going on. It's that whole offense. Like, I'm just waiting and seeing what happens. Like, Singletary could find himself in a good situation. We don't know. They got to add some wide receivers. They got to improve the offensive line. If they don't do that, people will talk themselves in the Singletary, and you could probably get a second round pick for him at some point.
Yeah. Last point I want to make about these running backs before we move on to wide receiver. We have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, who we think may be going to Dallas, but we're holding off on that news because it's not confirmed, and it's don't listen to us. We'll update you when it is. Austin Eckler. We don't know what's going on there. And then there's some lesser known guys or not lesser known, but I guess lesser productive guys who could still impact some backfields. We got Madison, we got Zeke, we got CEH, who maybe is a utilization issue, probably not, but maybe. We got Cam, if he's healthy, who knows? We got a J.K. Dobbins who's throwing out videos. We got A.J. Dillon. There's guys who are going to impact backfields. I don't think they're going to be useful for fantasy much, barring injury. But these guys are going to impact, what we think of current backfields, and especially Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler, wherever they land, they're going to be at least interesting for fantasy, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those guys, like Henry in particular, he's gets volume no matter what.
Yeah.
And you were reading, like, I think his yards before, like after contact was still really good. His yards before contact has been the same. Like, I think it was just more a line issue in Tennessee. So I think Henry is just this weird unicorn you just have to bet on wherever he goes. Like, they're going to feed him the rock and he's going to be good. Ideally, he ends up in a good offense. So if we get that, you get one last season with him. But outside of that, yeah, it's just, need the passing situation for Jones.
Aaron, is there anyone that you like on this list, like Ezekiel Elliott and Alexander Madison? Anyone who you're like really high on this particular list who you'd like to see land somewhere?
It's not Alexander Madison.
Rightly so.
I always kind of like Damian Harris. Aside from that, like, it feels like it's landmine season now, waiting for Henry, Jones, and Eckler to land somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind Nyheim Hines as a pass catcher. Zeke, I don't know what he's got left. Rolling down here, we've got Harris. I don't mind. JK, I don't know. He's young enough, but 2 major injuries, a third one actually on his leg. Kareem Hunt is interesting to me. I don't know anybody who else is further down that list. Is that the whole list?
A.J. Dillon's at the end of it.
No. I mean, is there anyone below Murray?
No. There's some. No.
I don't mind Zach Moss. Zach
Moss is the one.
I would love to see my sleeper from 2 years ago, Julius Chestnut, land somewhere and get a shot. I think he could come out of nowhere and be Kyron Williams. But
all right,
I was just always high on him. Who else we got here? No, it's not a great list. It's not great. Not great.
I think Moss, like you mentioned, is the one guy out of the group of kind of the afterthoughts that we saw him be a really efficient back. And part of that, like compared to his time in Buffalo, that's scheme related. You see the difference, what they're doing in Indianapolis and how those running backs are being very good. That's scheme related too.
That
so
line.
Yeah, right. So it's just completely different. So like this is the thing with running backs. If you understand schemes and like the style of play they fit in, and like where they're going, and you see it's a good fit, then that might be a time for you to invest in that player.
He's visiting with someone right now, but I can't remember. I seen it come up that Zach Moss was visiting somewhere, but I can't find it right now because there's 9 million updates every 30 seconds. So everything just comes up. Yeah.
If we find it, we'll let you guys know for sure. But let's move on to wide receiver right now. Not too much action in this market at the moment. But the big shoe to drop here was Gabriel Davis. You see, he's only 25 years old.
Did you them to stay tuned for that Zach Moss dropping news later? Is that what you did?
You know it.
Stay tuned for Zach Moss updates.
Only professional segues on the FFU right here, baby. All right. So Gabe Davis, 3 years. Jacksonville gave him 3 years, $39 million. As I teased earlier, I personally don't love this for Gabe Davis. If you're not producing with Josh Allen, with only Stephon Diggs and whoever else was receiving targets at the time, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, like whoever was receiving target, you can't become the number 2 option in that offense. That doesn't speak well to you and your skill set, in my opinion. Now he's going to a lesser quarterback in an offense that struggled last year, and he's trying to replace Calvin Ridley, who is a actually fantastic professional wide receiver.
Nope, we're not going to allow that. Not going to. No, that's not happening.
I was like, oh, it cut out. Oh, yeah.
How did that even happen? All right. So we don't need to talk about Calvin Ridley, but what we do need to talk about is Gabe Davis. What do we think about this fit in Jacksonville? From a reality standpoint, I think it looks good, but from a fantasy standpoint, are we interested in Gabe? Are we more interested now in the other pieces? How does he fit? Aaron, since you want to mute me on Calvin Ridley, talk about Gabe Davis instead.
I never thought I would hate a pass catching weapon for Trevor Lawrence more than Calvin Ridley. They signed Gabe Davis, so they're just like, hold my beer. I have no interest in this whatsoever. Quarterback downgrade, receiver downgrade. This hurts both of them. Yeah. He's Calvin Ridley, except with less talent and not a gambling problem. But I'm out. I have no interest. Maybe Jesse has more.
Yeah,
breaking it
out. He's
Zach Moss update instead.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, he's a better fit than what they were trying to do with Ridley last year. They were forcing him to play the X position. He can't play the X position anymore. Yeah. Like that's not who he is. He needs to be a flanker, off the line of scrimmage, beat the press, like that works. What you're doing with Gabe Davis, and this happens every fucking year with wide receivers who stretch the field deep, they get overpaid because it's very hard to find guys that can do that. This is the MVS shit we see every year, right? Where they're getting paid out of the, you know what I'm saying? I think Gabe Davis actually. Like he helps Ridley, or sorry, geez, I can't talk. Trevor Lawrence being able to push the ball down the field better. He does it better than Ridley. I think Ridley's a better overall wide receiver, but I think the scheme fit works really well with what they're trying to do there because they didn't have a guy that could do that last year. So fantasy wise, I think it helps Lawrence better than anybody else. Like I think that's the key winner of the situation. But for himself, like he's gonna be a boom bust wide receiver. You know what you're getting. He'll probably pop off for like 2 times in the year where he has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or something just ridiculous, right? But outside of that. Yeah, he's the best ball in the guy.
Yeah. Lamar, one of the Ravens safety, Geno Stone, just signed with the Bengals. Lamar tweeted out at Geno Stone, "You're dead to us. You're dead."
Lamar's great. That's so good.
I don't think he's happy to sign with a division rival.
Gotta love that competitive fire. Yeah, but like with Gabe Davis, I totally agree with you. Like whatever was going on with Calvin Ridley last year in Jacksonville was just not working. I mean, he was this close to, if you follow Ian Hartitz and you saw the videos that he put out like a 4-minute video of Jacksonville Jaguars pass catchers barely missing touchdowns. Either Lawrence overthrew him slightly or completely, or they didn't get their 2 feet in bounds in the end zone on the sideline. I mean, it was a disastrous video. Calvin Ridley was on that video 6 times and he scored 8 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley could have had easily 14 touchdowns last season. But we're talking about Gabe Davis. Calvin Ridley's gone. I think that, like Jesse, like you're saying, he's a better scheme fit. He's stretching the field, right? He's going to have those boom bust options in fantasy. Really what you want to do and go after right now, while it's the talk is about Gabe Davis, is you want to go after Christian Kirk. You want to go after Evan Ingram. You want to target those 2 guys in the offense who you know are going to be hyper targeted. And even though their value is elevated from their performance last year, they still could come in at a value for you and your fantasy team come 2024 because those guys are just going to be hyper targeted and there's going to be more space now for them to operate.
I don't get it though, because you spent the whole season telling us how good Calvin Ridley was.
He was PPR wide receiver 17.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Burr, baby.
Matt Harmon. Will tell you. Matt Harmon will tell you how good Calvin Ridley was last season. Success rates all over the board. Like Jesse's saying, he's a more well-rounded wide receiver. For whatever reason, it didn't work in Jacksonville last year. He's moving on. I'm still in on Calvin Ridley, but Gabe Davis, for me, the price is going to be a little too steep. I think I'm out.
It happens when you have a thin wide receiver core, and then you lose one of those key wide receivers in Zay, and then you're basically forcing Ridley to do something that you shouldn't force him to do. Fair. That's the biggest issue that I had. And then Kirk goes down with an injury too, and it's like, all right, I guess we're gonna give Evan Ingram 5 billion targets because we have no one else to throw the ball to. So yeah, like they need to draft another wide receiver, like help that wide receiver room improve and get better. And
the list of receivers who've signed today: Gabe Davis, Duvernay, and Gunner.
Yeah,
Gunner for $0. It's like, yes.
But that's the other thing, right? Is like we talked 2 years ago about what is Jacksonville doing in free agency? They signed Evan Ingram. They signed Christian Kirk. They re-signed Jamal Agnew. They had Laviska Shenault on the roster. It's like they went in and they needed an X. They needed some boundary guys, and they just brought in a bunch of slots who occupied the same area of the field. And they just like threw a bunch of shit at the wall to see what would stick. And what stuck was Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and then everybody else they got rid of. So the next year, what do? They just bring in Calvin Ridley again, who can move all over the field, right? So it just didn't make any sense from the way they were building their roster. Now they get a guy who can operate on the outside. This to me is like Michael Gallup heavy, where like he can stretch the boundary. He doesn't have an injury history, right? And it's like kind of that early Michael Gallup where he showed that athletic promise, could stretch the boundary and stretch the field for everybody else. But yeah, for fantasy, he's not for me. So unless anyone else wants to talk about
Laviska is a free agent. I'm just saying, that guy's a free agent right now.
Bring him back. Let's take a look at the list of the remaining guys. There's not too many that are interesting here. For example, please, for fantasy, we're not going to talk about MBS, but Tyler Boyd could land in an interesting situation. We have DJ Chark, who hasn't really shown out in the last couple of years and more a contested catch guy, but he'll be a name who people talk about once he's signed. But the big ones here, I think, are Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley. And then if you look further down this list, nothing really interesting. Darnell Mooney maybe is another name here of guys who can play. But I think we're really just talking about the two big boys, Hollywood and Calvin. Where do you want to see them land? What do you think their upside is wherever they go?
I mean, it depends on if they're going to be a good offense or not with a good quarterback. Like if you're putting them with just like this, imagine like they sign with the Giants and they have no quarterback. I'm going to be like, cool, this sucks because it's going to be the same situation, right? But Hollywood's he's the younger guy and he has dealt with a lot of injuries. So like you kind of have the ebbs and flows of him. I still think he's a good wide receiver. Like we saw 2 years ago when he was healthy, like him and Kyler absolutely balled out early on. And then it's kind of it fell apart. Right. So he's not bad. I think he's a guy that can come in and give them a nice ancillary wide receiver too to a team that needs it. Or like if it's like send him to Dallas, I'm all aboard the Hollywood train. Let's go. Or even Ridley, because you can move Lamb and Lamb can go all over. So ideally, I think Dallas is like the best spot for either one of those guys, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. How about you, Aaron? Any spots that you like? Who people who need a wide receiver who should just come get one of these guys, like Calvin Ridley?
I was just thinking of that for the rookies. Even there's not a lot of spots here where there's a receiver that could go. That I love it. It's like Chicago, assuming we have Caleb Williams. Like the Patriots could use a receiver, but we don't know. We're assuming not at 3. I mean, free agent.
No, I mean, or 3 wide receivers.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, I was looking at number 3. I'm looking at the draft board right now. That's why, assuming they take Daniels or May at 3, the Cardinals could use someone. The
like Hollywood.
The Chargers could use somebody for sure. Yeah, it's just
ugly. The Jets could use it too.
Yep. Yeah,
the Vikings stack receivers with no quarterback.
That'd be interesting. I would love to see the Jets and the Chiefs go aggressively after a free agent wide receiver. I just think the Chiefs got really lucky in the draft, but they're looking at an aging Kelsey. We saw what happened to them in the middle of the season. Everyone was questioning if they could, if they could do it again. They did. But it was just Patrick Mahomes had to put them on his back. Kelsey had to come out of retirement to play, premium playoff ball. I would love to see the Chiefs sign one of these guys. Hollywood Brown fit on the Chiefs. How does that make you feel about the Chiefs next season if Hollywood goes there?
The problem is who's going to overpay for these guys? Like none of the Chiefs, Niners, Ravens, any like the Cowboys, none of them either have space or the ability. None of them want to just blow tons of money on an average receiver. I could see Carolina, maybe they have capital and money.
Carolina desperately needs multiple wide receivers. You need to support Bryce. They got to find a way to get somebody on that team. Like they got to. You can't just do it.
Yeah,
but it's just
to that point, the 49ers are 5th lowest in cap space. They're actually negative cap at the moment, and the Bills are 3rd lowest. They're negative 12 million underneath the cap. So yeah, those two teams probably unlikely.
And I mean, Denver needs another wide receiver because they just got rid of Judy. Like, I know we like Mims a lot, but like, let's be real, he's shown next to nothing at the NFL level. So they need another wide receiver in that room. Like, there's teams that need like these ancillary pieces, like we're talking about. They can fit in well. It's just they have the quarterback and the money.
That's a good point. Let's talk about Judy real quick. Any thoughts about Judy's fantasy value since he went to Cleveland? I think it was yesterday in that trade. Do we think it's a positive move for him, negative move, neutral? And then how do we feel about his fit in Cleveland?
I think it kills Elijah Moore. Like, I think that's what happens. Yeah. So anybody who had hope for Elijah Moore, like, he's going to be playing in the slot, but why would you target Elijah Moore, who's been incredibly inefficient the last couple of years, over Judy or, Amari Cooper, who's a better wide receiver than all these guys, right? So I think it helps Judy because it gives him the potential to actually do something better in an offense that's going to be a lot more pass heavy this year. Like, we see the moves they're making and how they're structuring this offense. They're trying to pass the ball a lot. We saw Flacco, they passed over 40 times a game. And I think the guy that really helps that offense, and I mean, it's Mr. Deshaun Watson. Like, he's the guy that if he shows you anything he showed like in the past, like, he's super cheap right now and discounted. So, like, you could make the case to go get Deshaun Watson.
Giants are discussing a Brian Burns trade.
Yep.
So there's some of that cap and money going out the window.
Yeah, that's been in the news for a couple hours now.
Are we sure Deshaun Watson's better this year than Russ Wilson was last year?
We don't
asking for a friend.
We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. But like,
we don't
giving him better talent
in this situation. Maybe like,
yeah, like it's. I think. Let me see his price right now. I think it's pretty discounted. I think he's.
I really had high hopes for Cedric Tillman. That kills Cedric.
Yeah,
Tillman.
He's done. So is David Bell. He's done. Like, sayonara to those guys.
Exactly. But here's the thing, though. Like, how are we feeling now about David Njoku? Is he going to run it back? Assuming Watson can be, 80% of what Joe Flacco was able to be last year.
Right. I think there is some risk with him. It's just, like, we need the quarterback to be able to support him. So, like, this is with all these guys. If Watson struggles, they don't have Flacco, and I don't even know who's the backup. Is it DTR right now? Is he still the backup? It's like, if that's the situation, then yeah, it could be trouble. So I think you have to make a decision on if you want to invest in Judy or you want to invest in Njoku as the number 2 in that offense. And you could substantially hit or you could substantially miss depending on how those.
I don't know. I think it affects Cooper more. I was always under the belief, I forget who says it. It might have been Heath who says it, where there's a separate bucket for tight end and wide receiver targets. And I don't necessarily think an extra wide receiver hurts the tight end. They're kind of a separate thing. I don't know. I don't think it helps Njoku, but I think it hurts Cooper. But who else were they throwing to besides Cooper?
Well, Amari Cooper's been in the league for 10 years, since he was in diapers. So he's only 29 years old, right? So the guy has been able to avoid injury. He's still viable for another couple of years. And he looked great last season when he was healthy, right? So that's really, I don't think Jerry Jeudy is going to come in there and take targets away from Amari Cooper. But Njoku is a mystery box now to me because he's hyper athletic. He showed he could do it, but is Deshaun Watson even going to look at him? Or is he going to look at Jerry Jeudy, who's likely to be, this faster mover, probably running crossers over the middle of the field and, making it a much easier target than maybe a Deshaun Watson who's just, running hooks or running down the seam or whatever.
It just means they finally have a receiver who can produce in road games.
Finally, right? Yeah, and I mean, even Matt Harmon was saying like Amari Cooper had his best season as a pro last year. Like he was the most consistent he's been, and I know we to make the joke about road games, but he was better than he's been in a long time. So, I mean, part of that maybe was Flacco. Maybe even though Flacco was not really that good of a quarterback, it was a volume play, but he supported those guys. We'll see if Watson can. I'm not sure, but it's it's one of those dice rolls I don't mind taking with him.
Yeah, agree. And in the last 4 seasons, were they all in Cleveland? Let's make sure. Nope. In the last 2 seasons in Cleveland, 132 and 128 targets. So we know he's still commanding those targets. Will Njoku keep it up? Will Jeudy do it? I don't know. I'm not paying the price on Jeudy to find out. That's for sure. I think if you have him, he's probably a hold or even a sell if you can get the right price for him. But, I'd want a high-end second in Dynasty for Jerry Jeudy. And if you're being offered a mid-second, I'd probably just hold him and see what shakes out. What do you guys think about the price on Jeudy?
Yeah, if you give me a high-end second, he's immediately gone. I don't have any Jeudy, so I can't really speak, but you give me an early second, I'm immediately cashing out on Jerry Jeudy. Yep. What about David Njoku, who's the tight end 9 in Dynasty? Where are you guys at with that? Would you push him up or would you move him down or kind of keep him?
I like him at that price.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I think the theme of this show so far has been sell high on everyone.
Yeah. Like,
what are some names around Njoku?
so the next guy is Cole Kmet, and then it's Michael Mayer, Dallas Goddard, and then it jumps down. It's a pretty big drop off to like Dalton Schultz. I mean, if I had Schultz and you could tell me I could tear down to Schultz and get a plus on top of Njoku, I'd probably do that easily. But like, then it's the Pat Fryermuth, Luke Musgraves of the world. It gets pretty gross after that point. So, it's kind of in a weird spot. I think
Goddard for me, that's where it got gross.
Yeah, I think our concerns are quarterback based, right? They're not really player based. So Judy just goes to somehow potentially a worse quarterback situation than what he's been dealing with Russell Wilson in Denver. But that's it for wide receivers. Let's take a quick look at tight ends because why the hell not? But there's nothing real. Look, our biggest deal is Colby Parkinson, to the Rams. I think that's actually an interesting one because I'm not totally sure, and maybe one of you guys can correct me, but I think Tyler Higbee is likely to miss the beginning of the season in terms of his recovery from the injury last year. So that means that there's room for a tight end to produce in the beginning of the season. We also had hope for Davis Allen, who I think was a rookie or at least a second-year guy last year who came in and produced a little bit in short bursts in Los Angeles. So Colby Parkinson to the Rams, he's going to block, but is he going to be relevant because Matthew Stafford likes to target the tight end?
No, don't. Let me just phrase right. I'm gonna stop right now. Do not talk yourself into Colby Parkinson. He couldn't do diddly poo in Seattle. It was rough, man. He's just it's just bad. Like his PFF rating's not good. He didn't earn targets. Like he's just a guy, and I think he's the long-term replacement for Higbee. But it's the same situation. People will talk themselves into him and be like super frustrated when he puts up 60 targets in the season or whatever it is. Like I had to talk Seahawks fans off a ledge, and I was like, dude, it's fine. He's not that good. Don't worry about it. So. Yeah, like we're just gonna pass on him for sure.
Yeah, for real. Well, how about forget him then, Aaron? How about Jonnu Smith in Miami? Free now from Arthur Smith, which maybe isn't a good thing, but he goes to Mike McDaniel offense, and now we know that they don't have anything else there except for weapons. They have no defense to speak of. I think there was I forget who tweeted it out, but basically, who Andrew Van Ginkel, Christian Wilkins just went to the Raiders, right? Help me out. Who's the Ramsey, right? Gone. Who's the safety?
It's gone. Yeah, they're missing 3 starting offensive linemen, a bunch of defensive guys. It's like in shambles right now, and they're about to pay Tua $50+ million. So good luck, Miami. I wish you the best.
But sign Jonnu Smith, right? Like, Aaron, what are we thinking about Jonnu Smith? Is he able to do what he was able to do with Arthur Smith? Can he be a relevant tight end in fantasy, or is he just done?
This is the one I actually don't hate because they signed him. They just re-signed like 20 minutes ago Teron Armstead at left tackle. So the theme here is to basically sign guys who can protect Tua and keep him from getting another concussion. So with Tua, I know obviously Jonnu's not anywhere near his top 5 weapons even, but when he's scrambling for his life and wants to get rid of the ball, Jonnu's a good blocker and he's not the worst pass catcher. He could be a decent end zone target. I don't hate it. Like he's probably a depth tight end on a deep dynasty roster where I'm saving him for an injury, but he's probably going to have a week or two of fantasy relevance like he did this year. I'll tell you what, I'll take him over any of the other tight ends above him in Parkinson, Disley, or Warner.
Oh yeah, those guys are starting. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like I think he can do something that they've been lacking, somebody in the middle of the field and kind of stretch the team there. Because Waddle and Tyreek have been outside, they haven't really done the middle of the field with Tua. So I think he gives them a third option. Because if you look at that wide receiver depth chart, it was rough outside those top 2 guys. Like you look at it and you're like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. So yeah, I think he gives them another piece that helps out Tua. But all right, guys, I gotta hop off because I gotta pick up my daughter. So
yeah, well, we're gonna wrap this up. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us, and of course for all of us here at the Fantasy Football Universe, we thank you for joining us. If you're interested in any write-ups about free agency or the rookie class or anything that's going on, was that?
Zach Moss
updates, which are coming soon, I promise. And also any mock drafts that we're running, multiple times per week, please head over to our website, fantasyfootballuniverse.com. Please check us out on Twitter. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram, all over the place. And we're running, we're just putting out daily content at the moment, just trying to get this up and running. So we appreciate you joining us.
OnlyFans.
Well,
We're
yeah.
actually-
Well, watch me, disrobe. You don't want any of that.
Maybe.
But listen. So thank you so much again for joining us for the day one fallout. We'll be back day 2 or day 3. We'll see what else shakes out. For Jesse, for Aaron, I'm Jeremy. Thanks for joining us. And if I can, I'll stop stalling. If I can find my outro, here it is. We're gonna leave you. Talk to you later.